What's up, everybody? Welcome back. It's episode 79 of Spectator Sports, back at it again, covering a few topics around various sports leagues. But before we get started with today's episode number 79, please do me a massive favor, like this video, subscribe to the channel. If you haven't done so already, take a look at our Instagram and TikTok pages, and you can get clips from this episode on those platforms and on a playlist we made for you. And you can get the audio from this podcast on Spotify. All links are in the description. Monday Night Football, Eagles-Chiefs, Super Bowl 57 rematch. It's been a long 9 months. I mean, that loss as a fan, was pretty devastating, to be honest. It was rough the first few days. And to see this team respond with the adjustments Howie Roseman's has made, and to get on this start, is amazing, but it doesn't mean anything if they don't get this job done later on this season. And I wanted this win, absolutely, but in the grand scheme of things, not sure if it really matters if it doesn't end up with a Lombardi trophy at the end of the day, at the end of the season at least. Was it the Eagles' best game? Absolutely not. Cold, wet conditions. Both teams had issues with ball security. We saw a couple fumbles, we saw drop passes. Yet again, the Eagles were able to grind out a close victory, and this time they exact some revenge for that loss. And to break down the play, a lot of what happened in this game is mostly due to the first half, where the Chiefs honestly dominated. First quarter 7-7, but that second quarter the Chiefs made a couple of nice plays to close out the half and get out to a 10-point lead. And Spags wreaked havoc on the Eagles offense, except for one possession. A lot of pressure was doled out to Jalen Hurts. It overwhelmed the offensive line. They had issues with pass protection, a lot of nice slot corner blitzes that Jalen didn't anticipate. He nearly lost the ball, but had just a fumble that he was able to get back on top of. And Spagnuolo is one of the best DCs ever. He's maybe not going to be a head coach because he tried that, and just like other coaches, you know what your role is, and sometimes it's just a coordinator, and that's totally fine. Spags really knows what to do. He knows how to call plays. He was part of that 2007 Giants team that shut down that Patriots offense and prevented them from having that perfect season, and he really knows how to combat really good offenses. In the Super Bowl, forced a turnover against Jalen Hurts. That was really the difference in this game. Forced an interception in this game against Jalen Hurts, and he was under relentless pressure with this Chiefs defense. It's been the calling card for them this entire year. And yeah, I saw a lot of good things from the Chiefs offense, especially with the run game. Between Isaiah Pacheco, we saw a little bit of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and some Patrick Mahomes. They combined for 168 yards on the ground, a little bit of Kadarius Toney there. So there is some sprinkles, some creativity there, but still the pass catchers are the issue. The Chiefs' biggest issue this season has been drops, and we saw 5 on Monday Night Football. That's a season high, and they lead the league in drops. It's ahead of other teams that haven't been so good, like the Jets offense, for example. We saw a drop by Travis Kelce, but I think the 2 biggest drops were the MVS drop that easily could have been the go-ahead touchdown. He was catching it over his shoulder, and as he's securing it, it just kind of comes loose and then ricochets off the shoulder, and then it doesn't survive the ground and squirts out. That really is deflating when Mahomes is kind of battling under heavy pressure with the Eagles defensive line in his grill and doesn't get rewarded for those type of efforts. It's a beautiful pass. You can't put it any better than that. Next play, protection breaks down again. He's forced to throw the ball out of bounds, but it doesn't pass the line of scrimmage. That means that's a intentional grounding penalty. Next play, 4th and 25. That is extremely difficult, but it still gives Justin Watson a shot to convert that, but he just drops it. It's, again, a lot of coverage. Maybe didn't have the best opportunity there, but he had 2 drops in this game. That was another one was a crucial 3rd down conversion that he could have had, and that's really the difference in this game. Add in 2 red zone turnovers, one from Patrick Mahomes that was intercepted by Kevin Byard, and then Travis Kelce having a red zone fumble. A lot of these mistakes are things you can clean up, but the drops just continue to happen so far with the Chiefs, and that's where my worries are. The defense, I think they can win them a lot of games, but can the offense, yes, you have Patrick Mahomes, but he can throw it, but he also can't catch it. So that's the biggest thing. I trust Travis Kelce, but I don't really trust the other pass catchers with the Chiefs. The Eagles' offense is still, after 2 weeks, I mean, it seems that there's a little bit of flurry sometimes. I like sometimes when Brian Johnson is calling plays, especially with Devontae Smith running open deep along the right sideline to set up the go-ahead score. Some DeAndre Swift in there, but a lot of these horizontal passes I saw, they were like very lateral type of passes that were trying to get these swing passes going, get blocking downfield, but they were blown up or incomplete, near interceptions. Those need to stop. The play calling and the feel for the game is clearly not something that Brian Johnson is totally accustomed to just yet. He's not up to Shane Steichen's level as he was last year, so there's still some issues with that. But I think in the fourth quarter, especially in the second half, those adjustments were made. The run game got going, got the first touchdown drive to cut it to 3, and then to dial up that play to Devontae to really open up the passing game. That's big. I don't think the Eagles will play a defense other than the San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys a second time to this level of degree with the Kansas City Chiefs, but they definitely need to work on a few more things and be a little bit more complex. I think a little bit more motion, and the lack of A.J. Brown was concerning in this game, but he was covered pretty well by L'Jarius Sneed for much of this game, and a couple of times when they threw his way, it either resulted in an interception or near interception. Still not on the total same page right there, but I think he'll resume what the type of pace he was on. Definitely an off night, but he'll get it back. The Eagles are now 9-1. They are very comfortably at the 1 seed heading into Thanksgiving. We're about 3/4 of the way through the NFL season at this point. They have a couple more tough games, including the Bills at home, again the San Francisco 49ers, Dallas Cowboys on the road, and then the Seattle Seahawks. In this 6-game slate of a gauntlet, they're 2-0 right now, beat the Dallas Cowboys before the bye, beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I think if they even go 2-2 in this stretch, they end up at 11-3, and that was my bare minimum goal before the last 3 games, where they have the Giants, the Cardinals, and the Giants again. Those should be fine at that point. They may not even have anything to play for the way it's looking right now. Detroit, I think, is the only team that really is a team that can threaten them record-wise, but obviously Dallas, they can play them a second time at home. No easy thing to do to win over in Dallas, and then San Francisco's out for blood because they're looking really good after that little 3-game skid. They've won a couple of games and they're kind of rounding back into form. And for now, the Eagles are very much the best team in the NFC, if not the NFL. They proved it on the road, they proved it at home, and this will continue as long as they're able to grind out wins. It may not be pretty, but they are finding ways to win. This was a complete team victory. They should be happy about this, and definitely a long way to go, but they're definitely on their way to at least clinching the number 1 seed in the NFC come playoff time. Let's quickly talk about FedEx Field. I am a DMV local, and I've been to a bunch of events at the Commander Stadium, FedEx Field. And recently, in a game between the New York Giants and the Washington Commanders, the Giants celebrate a win, and you want to clean off before you go meet the press. And unfortunately, you turn on the hot water and there is cold water blasting. You don't even have hot water coming out of a NFL shower room. That is pathetic. FedEx Field is probably the last remnant of Daniel Snyder's toxic legacy with the Washington Commanders franchise. I mean, since taking it from RFK in DC to Landover, Maryland, it's been a longer trek for DC locals because that's on the edges of the DMV metro system. And it just takes a long time to get there. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and it's such a poor facility. Countless players have suffered injuries. I mean, we've seen Joe Burrow suffer an injury there. We've seen Chase Young, Robert Griffin III, Jalen Hurts nearly had his knees taken out from underneath him because fans were leaning on the fencing and that gave out. Fans got dumped with sewage because a pipe burst or leaked or something like that. It's a big yikes. And Magic Johnson and the owner of the Philadelphia 76ers have taken over with the ownership group and their new purchase. Obviously, they might look at new coaching staff, maybe rebranding the nickname yet again. Regardless, the stadium needs a massive renovation, even blow the whole damn thing up. It's a shithole. Let's be honest. It's one of the worst stadiums in the NFL, if not the worst. And it is just an eyesore. It's uncomfortable. So many things wrong with it. And this ownership group should look to either bring them back to DC, they used to play at RFK Stadium, or just simply renovate the current site at FedEx Field, because it is not up to the standards of what NFL franchises should have for their NFL stadiums with the modern renovation days. Just do better, Commanders, simply that. It's been a busy week in the NFL, and unfortunately we've seen a lot of injuries already this season. And to add on, we had to cover two big injuries to quarterbacks in the AFC North. To start off, Joe Burrow. On Thursday Night Football in a game against the Baltimore Ravens, we saw that he went out of the game with a wrist injury. He had issues with holding onto the football after throwing a touchdown pass. It just seemed that he couldn't grip the football at any point whatsoever. And I'm thinking it's maybe something with a nerve issue, if anything, just because he was reaching for his wrist and it seemed like a shooting pain, maybe with just a sudden grip, but MRIs come back on Friday indicating a torn wrist ligament, and that in fact ends his season after starting off the year with an injury to his calf and then kind of working his way into that first month of the season. The Bengals always had issues with just getting Joe Burrow back up to speed, and the offense was looking like it was kind of getting into form. He just was coming off that great game against the Houston Texans. But now with this injury, it just seems that the Bengals season is effectively over. I mean, it's going to be very tough just to get out of the AFC North with Joe Burrow, but without him, it's going to be virtually impossible. And already Joe Burrow is looking on that Andrew Luck track with the Indianapolis Colts. We know that Andrew Luck retired probably prematurely just due to the amount of hits he sustained and injuries he suffered during his Colts tenure. Obviously, easily going to be a Hall of Famer if he was just able to stay healthy and be part of the NFL for a sustainable amount of time, but the body can only take so much. The Colts did little to nothing to really help protect him, and the Bengals, they have tried. I get that, but a lot of these options that they had at the offensive line haven't proved to be of anything of value in protecting Joe Burrow. Now, these injuries to Joe this year, not on the offensive line, Rose, but he's still taking a ton of hits. In the time that Joe Burrow has entered the league, he's actually suffered plenty of more sacks compared to Andrew Luck, and that is an appalling statistic because Joe is the franchise quarterback for Cincinnati. He is a game changer. He is an all-world talent, arguably the second best quarterback in the AFC to challenge Patrick Mahomes. He's gone toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes countless times and still owns a winning record head-to-head against Patrick Mahomes. And at this point, you want to lose as many games if you're the Bengals. Get a high draft pick, get whatever the best offensive line talent out there, develop that person and develop that individual, make that your franchise cornerstone, whatever the case may be. Also extend Jamar Chase as well because he's up for a contract extension, obviously going to be well deserved there. And we'll see what happens, but I am very intrigued to see what is the future for the Cincinnati Bengals because they have to retool. I think they have basically everything, and then they also have to worry about T. Higgins and his contract situation as well. But this Bengals team may look different once Joe returns as well. Joe Mixon has taken pay cuts, but he may be a cap casualty as well. And they definitely need to revamp the defense because this year compared to last year, this defense is not the same as once used to be. You still have pretty good pieces, especially with Trey Hendrickson, but the secondary hasn't been the same. So a lot of things to work on, but it's over for the Cincinnati Bengals. Since our last recording, there's been just more and more developments with Draymond Green. Obviously, since then, we saw the Rudy Gobert incident that actually started between Jaden McDaniels and Klay Thompson. 2 minutes in, Jaden is known to be a hothead. We remember that in frustration due to an ejection last year, he broke his hand by punching a wall, and definitely has some impulse control. So a lot of players like to target him and really get him riled up and force him out of the game due to an ejection. He's very valuable for the Minnesota Timberwolves. He's one of their best wing defenders that they have. And Klay, at this point, really tried to poke the bear. He got a lot out of him. Jaden McDaniels lost his cool, basically ripped apart Klay Thompson's uniform. And then in the scuffle, you see Rudy Gobert trying to separate. He, I think, very briefly grabbed the neck of Klay Thompson just because he is so much taller. We remember that Rudy Gobert is like 7'1". Klay Thompson's about 6'7", and there's a height difference there. So it maybe looks like he's choking him. It looked like he was going to grab his shoulders just to pull him off. And then Draymond comes in, jumps on Rudy, and gets him into a very vicious chokehold. I mean, this is around the neck, arm is right there, and cutting off air. I mean, there was no tap out, but it was definitely a precarious situation for Rudy Gobert, not a basketball play. It resulted in Draymond's ejection and later suspension for 5 games. Now, Draymond's a repeat offender, and I mean, choking, I don't think that 5 games is enough. In my opinion, I think a 10-game suspension, make an example out of him, because he's a repeat offender. And I mean, the Warriors, they didn't suspend him because they were defending champs and they didn't want Draymond to miss out on ring night. So he was given a hefty fine, whatever the case may be. He's had incidences with Steve Kerr, who did call him out in the post-game press conference because he can't do that. And for a guy of Steve Kerr's caliber, I mean, he's known as the guy that got punched by Michael Jordan in his days with the Bulls. And he has a big reputation for being a little bit more of an understanding person and coach, even because he dealt with issues with Draymond in 2016. And he's had to manage Draymond's temper throughout his coaching career. Regardless, Draymond isn't really the most controllable player, right? He is a loose cannon. He has no wherewithal or sense of holding things back, maybe thinking a little bit before acting. Joe Dumars is now one of the heads of the disciplinary board of the NBA, so he was the one that handed out this suspension. They obviously are pretty close beforehand. And for Draymond, there's just so many times I viewed this thing as more than being a hard-nosed player. It's just more selfish. This is a repeat offense, and he's done this countless times, and I honestly view it as selfish. He's celebrated for being a tough, hard-nosed player, and we need that. We need the Rodmans. We need Draymond's tough-nosed defense on the court. But there's also this that you have to hold your emotions in check because you got to know how valuable you are to your team. And when you act out like that, it's unfortunately a very selfish act that also it compromises your team. This happened in 2016. It wasn't the one incident with LeBron James swiping at his groin. It was the 2 kicks to Steven Adams' groin that went over the Fagelin foul point limit in that postseason run. He got ejected for the stomp on Domantas Sabonis last year. I mean, countless things. And Rudy Gobert was actually pointing out something, that the amount of times that Draymond gets suspended is more likely when Steph is out. When Steph is there, Draymond's pretty much intact. He will still do Draymond type of shit. But when Steph is out, at least, Draymond, I guess maybe he doesn't want to really suit up and play. He just does his own thing. And there's no real thing where I haven't heard him apologize to his teammates. I haven't heard him apologize to the Warriors organization. There's been times where he's always big on his podcast, and he will routinely say that what happens here isn't applicable to me. Fine. But there's no accountability. There's no self-accountability. And that's where I think he's a very, very selfish player and person. At the end of the day, people will have their opinions of Draymond Green. Mine is always that he is a guy that has all the talent, but he's also part of the Warriors system. And his actions cost them not only championships, but could have been one of the best all-time dynasties as well. To go back to quarterback injuries, we know about Cleveland's situation. Right after Cleveland's quarterback led them down the field for a game-winning drive and a crucial division win against the Baltimore Ravens on the road for a game that they trailed for much of that ball game. It turned out that he suffered not only just an ankle injury, but a fractured shoulder bone, and that's going to take him out for the rest of the 2023 NFL season. This adds on to the laundry list of injuries he suffered and just his whole tenure so far. I mean, he had shoulder injuries already. He had issues before. In college, he tore an ACL. So these things are starting to pile up. Unfortunately, it just isn't really meant to be in the cards these couple of seasons with the Cleveland Browns. And they've already committed. They gave out the whole farm for this guy. Traded him from Houston to Cleveland. Draft capital, money, financial assets to get this guy over here to Cleveland. And it just hasn't resulted in anything too significant. I mean, you see little flashes from what he used to be in Houston, but he hasn't been on the field, whether it's through suspension or injury, in his first 2 years. And Cleveland really messed up. If they were to have Josh Dobbs, maybe he wasn't in the right system, but he got out-competed by Dorian Robinson-Thompson. And now Dorian Robinson-Thompson is going to be taking over as the starting quarterback for the remainder of the year. And it just begs the question, what's the deal and what is Cleveland's ceiling? That defense single-handedly won that game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And for right now, I mean, they're going to wait time. I think this defense can really change a ball game and they can keep them in games. But can the offense, without even Nick Chubb, can they muster up 20 points? That's a huge ask. I like Ford. I like Amari Cooper. But without who their starter is and what his talent is and what he can really do with this offense, it's going to be very, very hard for the Cleveland Browns to make any noise in the playoffs. I think it'll be good. I think they'll make the postseason as a 6th seed in the wild card. But depending on who they might match up against, it's going to be a pretty short stay in the playoffs, just because I just don't see that offense mustering up enough points for that defense to say, we'll hold the team down to 17 points, but can that offense match that or surpass that to win the ball game remains to be seen. Green Bay took on the LA Chargers, and again, this is a game with Brandon Staley mismanaging the Chargers team, and this is again a game where they are in it, they're close, but they just can't get over the hump, and it's another one-possession game under Brandon Staley's tenure, which he's lost. Too many times we're seeing this where these are lower or inferior competition. I mean, the Packers, I like certain aspects about them, but the way that Jordan Love was looking before, maybe a game or two before, and for him to tear up this LA Charger defense the way he did is just another knock against Brandon Staley. He's still very adamant about calling defensive plays. He got into it with a reporter in the post-game press conference, and I think that's just something that we're seeing now where he's just unraveling. Unfortunately, the locker room isn't really buying in. He's saying one message to the press and it's something else on the field or in the locker room. The Chargers, I said this countless times, right? They are really screwing with the development and the prime of Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert is one of the best talents out there. And what he's been able to do with so little, right? Keenan Allen is like the only guy that he has right now, and he's force-feeding Keenan Allen. You're seeing Keenan Allen get maybe 15, even 20 targets a game, and he's catching at least, at a minimum, 10 to 12 balls a game for over 100 yards. But then it's a question of who's that other guy to take pressure off of Keenan Allen, to give him a little bit more space, make the defense play a little bit more honest. The O-line isn't as good as what we'd like it to be. Austin Eckler is too small of a back. The defense just lost Joey Bosa, who was carted off the field. He may be done for the season. They really missed out on J.C. Jackson. He seems to be on his way out of the NFL, could be. He wasn't anywhere successful. He wrecked his knee year one, did not play very well in year two, was eventually traded back to New England. And this is just a case of what happens when you have options, but as the Spanos family has done routinely, they've missed on head coaching prospects. They could have easily had better or other options if they were simply able to fire Staley after the postseason run last year. I think they very much limped into the postseason because of the Mike Williams injury. And now we're seeing yet again that they're unraveling. And with the Denver Broncos, who have been red hot as of late, coming to play the LA Chargers, if they drop to 4-7, I would think that might be the last game that Brandon Staley ever coaches with the LA Chargers. It's just so hard to return from 4-7. You have to basically go undefeated the rest of your games. And they still have to play the Chiefs. They have to play the Raiders yet again. And they're last place in the division. That wasn't something I expected for them coming into the season. Did I think that they were going to make a deep postseason run? No. But I think they would be in the wild card mix, not at the last position of their division. So LA is on life support right now. If they lose, I think Brandon Staley is out. News broke on Monday that Zach Wilson not only was benched, but has been demoted to the third string position. And this is coming off a string of very poor performances. We had some hope after October. He was looking better against the Kansas City Chiefs, but just made untimely mistakes that cost them the game. Then they went on this little win streak, including beating the Philadelphia Eagles at home. And still, in the last 3 games, they lost to the Chargers, they lost to the Raiders, and then they just got blown out by the division rival in the Buffalo Bills, who are coming off a game where they got embarrassed by the Denver Broncos and they fired their offensive coordinator. And Zach Wilson just simply cannot muster anything offensively. I mean, there's just so few options out there. The O-line isn't giving him enough time, and that's making him skittish in the pocket. And there's just running out of excuses, right? Robert Saleh is just trying to be a puppet for the Johnson family, right? He's coming up every post-game press conference saying that Zach's our guy. We're going to stick with Zach. And the locker room is unraveling, and that's just mainly not even due to Robert Saleh. I don't think he really wants to start Zach Wilson at all. He is unfortunately suffering for the mistakes that ownership made in drafting Zach Wilson in 2021. He's been the backup. He was supposed to learn under Aaron Rodgers, but with Rodgers tearing his Achilles 4 plays into the season, Zach got thrown into a situation that he did not expect. He did his best. He's doing his best, but his best isn't good enough. And that's just what the business is. We've tried to sugarcoat these things, but Zach, at the end of the day, is unfortunately a bust in this league. He needs a new scenery. He's going to probably ride the bench for the rest of the year. And Tim Boyle, I don't know what options they really have. I don't know what his capabilities are of running this, but it is at least a fresh start. Maybe even a spark for this Jets team because they need it. If not, there's no point in all the rehab that Aaron Rodgers is doing. If the team is 4-9 heading into whatever the matchup that he tries to return from, there's no point. The Jets would be done at that point. Like I said, Rodgers, admire his efforts to come back soon, but he should really try to slow it down just based on how the Jets are doing because there may not even be a postseason to save if they're already eliminated. Detroit played awful for 55 minutes, and it seemed that Justin Fields was going to make a smashing return after missing 4 games due to a dislocated thumb. And right when he was able to come back, he showcased what he could do. Now, he may not be the long-term starter in Chicago because the way the season is going, they'll very much likely end up with the first overall pick the way that Carolina is playing, and they could have the opportunity to have a game-changing talent at quarterback. And Justin Fields at this point might as well be auditioning for his next team. The way he's looked in limited action after that rough start, I think he's definitely worthy of being a quarterback starting for other teams. Now, at this point, I think what he's able to do, develop still more as a passer, but that running game is still very much there. The read option is there. His ability to break, contain is there. And then passing has made strides just because he's had a little bit better protection and a little better pass catchers on the outside. And what he was able to do really put Detroit in a bind. He gave Detroit fits last year, and he did so again on Sunday. And Detroit did everything they could, but eventually they got some stops late and rallied from a 12-point deficit with under 5 minutes left. And this is what good teams do. Yeah, I understand their losses against the Seattle Seahawks and then getting blown out by Baltimore. Not ideal, not good. But they've responded. They've gone on little win streaks after those losses as well. And Detroit right now stands at 8-2 heading into their Thanksgiving game. This is what I really wanted to see out of Detroit, because every year we see Detroit, they end up on Thanksgiving. They get that 12:30 slot. And I understand it was tradition, but Detroit, for the better part of my existence and even in their franchise's existence, they have been at the bottom of the NFC Central and NFC North divisions. But now they're totally different. I mean, 8-2, this is their best record in over 60 years. On Sunday Night Football, we got to see the Josh Dobbs-led Minnesota Vikings take on the suddenly surging Denver Broncos. After a 3-game win streak, including a great Monday night win against the Buffalo Bills on the road, they returned home to host the Minnesota Vikings. And this is kind of a redemption story for both teams and both QBs. I mean, Josh Dobbs, journeyman NFL quarterback, rallying the Minnesota Vikings to a couple big wins. And then Russell Wilson, who was kind of left for dead to start this year after that nightmare season under Nathaniel Hackett. Not the best of starts, and kind of not ideal game against the Kansas City Chiefs on Thursday Night Football. Returned to what he kind of was in Seattle. I mean, right now he leads the league in touchdown to interception ratio, not taking a lot of risks, pretty good passer rating, above 100, making game-winning plays. I mean, down by 5. Game on the line, leads the Broncos to a touchdown drive to win this game. Beautiful pass to Courtland Sutton at the back of the end zone. And Sean Payton, for as much crap I gave him to start this year after that embarrassing game against the Miami Dolphins, which everyone will harp on, the defense has gotten it together. They've held Kansas City in check in 2 matchups, and the offense is slowly coming along. Are they elite? No, but they've returned to 5-5, and after that 0-3 start, the 1-5 start, to get back to this point is something to be celebrated. I mean, you got to take and celebrate the little victories in the NFL, I think, for certain franchises with certain goals. And they're doing it right now. I mean, what they're able to turn around. Now, the schedule kind of gets a little bit harder. They have a big matchup against the Chargers, and then several key matchups as well later down as the season rolls into December. I'm not saying they'll make the postseason, but they're going to be in the hunt for a little bit. They'll be competitive, and it's very possible that they're building a foundation for next season. They may just miss on the postseason, but where they were and where they are now, I think Denver really has found that Russ can be a quarterback. He can be their guy. Sean Payton knows what he's doing. Just give him an off season to get under some of this mess still, and he'll clean some things up, and maybe next season Denver is going to be a true playoff contender. Tyrese Maxey has shined after James Harden's departure out of the Philadelphia 76ers. So far, he has ascended to being that true second star alongside Joel Embiid, who is very good to start off this year. Joel Embiid is going above 31 points a game, and Tyrese Maxey is just a hair under 27 points a game. Very efficient stat line as well. He just had a 50-piece as well. It just begs the question, can he make the All-Star team at this point? I mean, without James stopping the ball and maybe throwing it down to Joel Embiid, the ball is moving, and this has also helped Tobias Harris as well. Tobias numbers have been back up to 19.2 points a game, and the Sixers are off to a very good start, second best record in the West. And now question is, obviously this is addition by subtraction with the departure of James Harden. How far can they go, and what can they do with this new team? The 2023 World Cup final, Australia beats India in a big-time upset. I mean, India is coming in as undefeated heavy favorites at home with a raucous crowd. This is the biggest stadium in all of sports. It can seat up to 130-some people, and I mean, this can get loud. It's very, very passionate about their Indian cricket team. But Australia, after starting the campaign, losing 2 matches, losing to India, losing to South Africa, they go on a little bit of a revenge tour in the knockout stages, beating South Africa in the semifinals, and then later beating India in the World Cup final to clinch their 6th World Cup title. And what a year it's been for Australia. I mean, starting off the year with the World Test Championship, winning the Ashes against your bitter rivals in England, and now the World Cup trophy. I don't think anybody has had a better year than Pat Cummins in cricket this year. They've done this on a consistent basis. They've won 6 World Cups, like I said, but they've done it against some of these premier competition. In '99, they took on one of the best Pakistani teams, beat the brakes off of them in the final, destroyed India not once, but twice. They beat one of the best New Zealand teams ever in 2015, and they beat Sri Lanka and one of their best teams in 2007. This team knows how to play aggressive cricket. There may be a little bit brash. Cricket is the gentleman's game, and they talk a little trash, but they really do back it up. Maybe this edition of Australia's cricket is a little bit softer and kinder on the pitch, but they really are one of the best ever. They have the talent. They know how to develop the players, and this attacking, aggressive mindset that they have sets them alone, and that's translated to countless championships across all formats of cricket. And that's it for this episode of Spectator Sports. Thank you so much for tuning in. Happy Thanksgiving to all those that celebrated. Thank you so much for Joey for editing this video. And please do me a favor, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. All links are in the description for clips and audio from this podcast. You can get it on Spotify. Thank you and goodbye.